Hey guys, it's Joey from Digital DJ Tips, and welcome to Making Your First Tune, a guide for DJs, part 3. We're now halfway done with our tutorial series, and by now you should have your production arranged in chunks within Ableton Live, using our song map method that I taught in the last video. If this is the first time you're joining us, I suggest checking out the first 2 videos and accompanying articles over at the Digital DJ Tips website before proceeding. Okay, in this week's video, we're gonna cover 2 things. 1, we're gonna add some simple effects to your track to give it a more polished sound. And 2, we're gonna add some automation to these effects so we can further control how they work. We did the brunt of the arranging and producing work in last week's video. So in this week's lesson, we're gonna knuckle down and focus on some of the finer details of our production. Let's get to it. While your track already plays and sounds like a full-length song, we can still make some tweaks to get it sounding even better. Although some of the loops in the Beatport Sounds pack already have a bit of compression and EQ, we still haven't added any effects like reverb and delay, which will really fill out our soundstage and give it more depth. But what exactly is reverb, and how is it different from delay? Whenever we make any sort of sound, such as talking or clapping our hands, a portion of that sound goes straight to our ears, while a portion of it goes out into the space around you, bouncing off objects before getting to your ears. Our brains make sense of these reflected sounds by grouping them together, giving us the impression of an acoustic space. This is a byproduct of how our hearing evolved, and it helped out our ancestors with survival, letting them know whether they were in a safe place like a cave or out in the open exposed to danger. This is why you can tell even if you're blindfolded, whether you're in the middle of a large venue like Wembley Stadium or in the undesirable confines of your Psycho X's bedroom. A reverb effect simulates what it sounds like to be in a particular acoustic space, like a concert hall, a church, or even a bathroom. Ableton Live comes with its own reverb effect that you can use. Let's try doing that right now. Alright guys, so let's try adding some reverb to last week's project. Once you've opened it, head to Arrange View if you aren't in it yet, and then left click on the space right before measure number 25. So, this one over here. And hit the spacebar to playback. Okay, I want to add some reverb on the synth sound here. Let's click on the solo button to hear it better. Yeah, there we go. That's the right one. Okay, so to add reverb, first let's head over to the session view. Let's take a look at Live's mixer. By the way, I went ahead and labeled all my tracks already so they're easier to spot. I suggest you do the same if you haven't yet, just so your project's a bit more organized. Over at the synth track, this one, you'll notice 2 circles here labeled A and B, with the word sends right beside them. These are your track sends, and what they do is they send audio out into another channel. In the case of send A, it goes to this track over here labeled A reverb. And in send B, it goes to B simple delay. These are your return tracks, and they bring back the affected audio to the mix. If you don't see these 2 tracks here on the right side, make sure the buttons S and R are enabled here on the right side. Just make sure they're highlighted. Okay, now let's go ahead and do the reverb. By rotating send A clockwise, we're sending audio to our reverb effect that's placed in the A reverb return track. Let's try that right now. Press the space bar to play back the track, then turn send A fully counterclockwise. You'll begin to hear it sound like it's in a large space. This is the audio being affected by the reverb plugin. You can control how loud the reverb is in the mix by moving the fader on the A reverb return track up and down. You can also change how the reverb sounds. Click on the A reverb track, and you'll notice an interface appear below. These are the reverb parameters that you can modify to change the way it sounds like. Try playing around with decay time to see how this changes the sound of the reverb. Hear it getting larger. Try playing around with size too. If you want the parameters to go back to their default states in the reverb effect plugin, all you have to do is click on the parameter that you changed and hit the delete or backspace button. There, that's it. Experiment by adding reverb to other tracks in the song by dialing in their sense and see how it affects the way the instruments sound. While delay is also caused by bounced or reflected sounds, it differs with reverb because it produces a distinct sound at a later time, like an echo. Think about shouting in an empty rave warehouse and hearing your shout bounce back to you. Delay is basically a copy of a sound played back at a later time and can be used to thicken a sound or as a doubling effect. Let's try using Live's built-in delay effect right now. Okay, so now let's try adding a delay effect. Let's go back to Arrange View. Tab. Okay, and then click on the space beside measure 41, just at the start of the hook. Let's try this one here. Press play. Okay, let's say I want to add a delay effect on the synth we're here. Okay, let's stop and then go back to session view. Then click on the solo button under the track containing that synth. This one here. In my case, it's bass track. Hit play. Okay, and then let's turn up Send B all the way. You'll begin to hear the delay effect making echoed copies of the synth line. Hit play again to stop. Click on the solo button to unsolo, and then hit the space bar again to see how it sounds like in the context of the song. Let's add some reverb just to make it sound spacey. If your master's clipping, lower the volume fader for the meantime. Sounds good. Now that we've added some reverb and delay to our track, let's add some automation so the effects don't sound so static. Why would you want to do this? Well, we add automation to give our track more dynamics by changing different parameters, whether it's by changing the intensity of a reverb, decreasing the volume of an instrument, and others. Before the digital audio workstation, and before motorized recording consoles were invented, a sound engineer had to make all of these changes on the fly, usually by asking another pair of hands or two to help out, as the track recorded to tape. Today, we don't need to do that because we can program these changes in our DAW. The process of programming these changes is called writing automation. An example of automation would be this. Let's say that the lead synth would sound great with a lot of reverb, say in the verse chunk. But for a different chunk, either in the chorus or the pre-chorus, we may not want to have as much reverb in it. Automation lets us make these changes by adding automation points, which tells the DAW when to modify a parameter. That's all there is to it really, so let's go ahead and try adding some automation effects right now in the effects that we added earlier. Okay, so now that we've dialed in some reverb and delay, let's go back to Arrange View and try playing back the song here at the verse, which is measure 17. Check it out here, alright, playback. Okay, now you're hearing the bass line and my production sound out of place. That's because we added the delay effect to the hook portion in measure 41. But we only want it to work for the hook chunk, not the verse, because this is the result we're gonna get. It just sounds messy. So how do we fix this? That's where automation comes in. We can draw automation points that tell Ableton Live, okay, so at the verse, I don't want any reverb or delay. But when it comes to the chorus, I want them in full effect. Here's how to do it. Head here to the right side of Arrange View, just under the track name. You'll see it say A reverb. Notice that there's an orange colored dotted line going throughout the song. this one over here. This is your automation envelope, and dragging it up and down changes the level of send A, just as if you were turning the send knob in the mixer section clockwise. Let's try removing the reverb for the verse, but keeping it for the chorus. Click on the automation envelope here at measure 17. Okay, you'll see a circle appear. This is an envelope breakpoint. Click and drag it all the way down. You'll notice this little box here on the right side that says -INF, or negative infinity. This is your send A level. Now click on the automation envelope beside measure 41 to create an envelope breakpoint, which is the start of the hook. Okay, then click it again and drag it all the way up. Notice that the little box on the right side now says 0, which is the maximum send level. You'll notice the automation envelope now has a slope that begins at the start of measure 17 and ends at measure 41. This means that as the verse progresses, the send A level increases incrementally. Well, that has certain uses. In this case, we don't want that. We want it fully closed for the verse. Let's add an envelope breakpoint just after the verse, here on measure 33. Left click on the automation envelope to add a breakpoint, then click again and drag it all the way down. Okay, now this looks just about right. Let's play back. Throughout the verse, send A is closed, and it only opens during the chorus. There. Remember that we have a verse 2 and another chunk of choruses in the end, so go ahead and add those breakpoints and set the send level accordingly. Okay, we're almost done. Remember that what's making the bass line in the verse a bit off is the delay. So go ahead and write the same automation changes for the delay effect by heading to the drop-down menu. Over here, choose B, simple delay, or delay if that's what you have, and making the same automation changes as you did with the reverb a while ago. Okay, let's take a listen. That's cleaner. Listen to the hook. Okay, we have reverb and delay going on. That's good. Check out the second verse. Alright. And let's listen to the last chorus. Alright, so that's it. You now have a basic idea of how automation works. Alright guys, so that's all the time we have for this video. So just to recap, we did two things in this week's tutorial. One, we added some reverb and delay to tracks in your production. And two, we wrote some automation to give these effects more dynamics as the song progresses. Remember, almost every single effect value in Ableton Live can be automated. So for now, I'd like you to experiment with automating those other parameters in the reverb and delay effects that we've set up. Check out the full training article at digitaldjtips.com, and if you have any questions, just feel free to post them in the comments section of our site, and I'd gladly answer them as soon as I can. Again guys, thanks for watching. I'm Joey for Digital DJ Tips. See you soon.